All right, I would like to call the design review committee hearing to order here at 3:00 p.m. on December 19th, 2022. For the record, I note that both the appointed design review committee members are here via Zoom, as well as planner Hanna Veal, planner Betty Gum, and staff member Kina Champion. Are there any changes to the agenda by either myself, staff, or the committee?
I don't have any. Nope.
No changes to the agenda. All right, thank you. And then with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda, consisting of the December 5th, 2022 minutes and the subdivision fiscal year 2022-0004 Elle Estates, as the applicant has requested it to be moved to a date undetermined.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All right, and with that, we can move on to the public hearing items. The first being action item subdivision fiscal year 2022-0007 quad 6 subdivision, a preliminary plat processed as a plan unit development with Jaden Schneider with Bronze Bow Land is requesting a residential subdivision consisting of 7 residential lots and 1 common lot located at 4640 North Adams Street. For the record, I would like to announce that I am also going to be giving the staff reports for the applications being heard today. Jaden, are you here or anyone of your team?
We're here.
Okay.
Jaden's out of town.
Great, okay. You can come up to the dais and present your application.
Yeah, did you get the PDF?
I do. You want me to pull it up for you?
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay.
Necessary.
No, I mean, I think it's always good to have for reference. I don't know if I uploaded it though. I don't. Oh, maybe your old one. That looked like the old one.
Yeah, but I think it's close. Can I?
You can also pull this out.
Yeah, that is the old one. Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
So I don't have the new one uploaded
Okay.
since it was sent to me pretty last minute.
Okay.
They do have the materials online as well as you, so we can utilize your submittal packets like your December 8th.
Can you plug in a laptop? I have my laptop there.
Do you have a USB?
So, yeah.
Tina, do you want to find the USB drive and then I just need to. Can we just utilize your?
Yeah, you have the other one that was sent last week, right? You should have that one too. So we just had some minor changes. I think this one
On the 8th?
Yes, well, that's. I can use that. Let me grab my laptop too, sir.
Okay. Want me to go upload something real quick? So I'm. They sent me a PowerPoint today. This is recent? Yeah. So I don't have access to the picture. Do you have it pulled up?
On here I do, but not.
If you, you can you connect to Zoom via your laptop?
I don't have internet. I need Wi-Fi and then I probably can. It'd take a few minutes.
Just because if we can't use your resubmittals and just go off of your resubmittals, we don't have,
Yeah.
I don't have access to our
Okay.
internal system from this.
So you didn't get this one that. So this one's not on,
It's not
right?
online.
Okay. So it just kind of pinpoints what we did. I mean, I can talk about the changes
Mhm.
if we want to do that. Yeah. So just pull it. Where was that one that you had?
So you have
Oh,
the
sorry.
December 8th and the December 5th resubmittals.
It's this one.
And you'll want to share your screen too.
Okay, how do I do that?
So if we go back to Zoom,
This one or this?
Yeah.
This one?
that one, and then share screen. On this.
Perfect.
All right, well, we're ready whenever you are.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, so my name's Bill Tillman. I'm part owner of this project. Our engineer's out of town, so kind of filling in right now. So to start out, our original layout that we had was similar to this layout. However, there's been some changes that have definitely improved the project. Originally, can they see my mouse too? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Originally over here, on the Adams side, we were proposing a 5-foot common area, 5-foot setback, and we have moved that to a 10-foot setback to allow for the larger trees, the landscaping, the larger trees that go with the landscaping plan for Garden City. We also moved over here on the top of the private drive. We moved that common space from 1 foot to 3 feet. And in our updated landscape plan that we don't have here, but you guys do have it. You will see the new landscaping to provide screenage and cover there. Let's see here. Originally, we had a common lot with 0 setbacks here on the eastern side of the project. And we have changed that and allowed the lot lines of each townhome to go all the way to border. And we are doing a cross access easement for all the property owners to access that sidewalk and access their home there. Let's see here. Originally, we had submitted to have our guest parking in the driveways here as well. And we've gone back several times with Hanna and staff to create the best project and the best parking situation for this project. We had moved the entire private drive further east down here and added some parallel parking up top on this area. And that did not work for several different reasons. The most prominent one being that it eliminated our driveways, and the fire department needs a 15-foot driveway, for their trucks. Let me just read this. Structures greater than 30 feet in height will require aerial fire access roadways. These roadways shall be a minimum of 26 feet in width, which is what we have, but located at least 15 feet but no more than 30 feet from the building. So that would put us within that 15-foot buffer. So we really need to keep those 15-foot driveways because of our building height here, per the fire department. We also had I don't think it's on here. Yeah. We also had another version with some common parking. Excuse me, sorry. What is going on here? With some common parking, 2 parking stalls right here. And we moved these garage entries to this side over here with a driveway here and a driveway here entering the garage from the turnabout sides. And we had a parallel parking stall here and a parallel parking stall here. And what that did is it took away a lot of our common area here, our common lot. So we weren't able to maximize the common lot for the subdivision. So ultimately, we kind of went back to a very similar design that we had. And we're asking for a waiver for the parking. One sec here to go to. We're asking for the parking to be 15 feet by 16 feet wide, which is what the driveways are. So it would be an 8-foot by 15-foot compact parking stall. But what we are providing are 14 extra additional guest spaces, and all we're required are 4. And then obviously we have our garages as well. So we're meeting our required covered parking within those garages. One other item that in our initial design review was kind of an issue that you guys had requested a little bit of change, was some change in the elevation of the floor plan. So we've really gone back. I apologize, you don't have it here on screen right now, but we've gone back and updated the elevations, and we really updated the Adams Street elevation. We added a nice covered patio, side light windows. We moved the front door over. It used to be in the corner. We added brick and like stone or brick, and we added balconies and patios on all of these. So all of these have balconies as well. Try to see real quick. I believe that is pretty much it where we're at now. Back to the common space. Now with this new or updated layout, we definitely have enough common space as well, and utilizing this cross access easement as well. So we're at 3,400 square feet, and I believe we needed just over 1,900 square feet to meet our 10% parking our 10% common space. And that's not including the 10-foot easement here or the 3-foot setback here as well that will be landscaped, or this other side on the north side here. I think that's about it.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, just quickly, the packet we're looking at is titled basically December 5th, 2022. And in there, I see an Adams Street southwest elevation that does have stone and kind of a balcony above the center. Just making sure that's the most current that you were describing.
I believe so. Yeah, let me see here. I don't have it on my screen, but I have it on my other presentation. So let's see here. Yeah, does the covered area, does it spans the entire width of that?
It looks like it, yeah, with maybe
okay,
a standing seam roof and some kickers. Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So and on that, then there's a grade change going west, I would call it. How does that work with the sidewalk? Is that just a graded sidewalk, or what's this? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're not 100% sure how much we're going to have to raise that. Because of the floodplain, we're going to have to raise it up. So this elevation shows with the garage not raised. One of the layouts that we had eliminated those driveways, And we were gonna keep the garage very low because we didn't have enough room to drive a car up a very steep driveway to get into that garage. So with the 15-foot driveways, we might be able to just keep everything on the same level. We're not really sure, but most likely the sidewalk on Adams, if that's what you're asking about, that's already in and that's already flat and everything. So the only thing we would have to worry about is like
The grade in between. Okay.
yeah. So from like here or here, possibly going up some steps or, something like that.
Yep. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I'm seeing no questions from the committee. So with that, I can present my staff report and then we'll give it back to you for rebuttal.
Okay.
Once public testimony is heard, but can I have you cancel the Zoom share from that desktop, please?
Maybe. Oh, right up there.
All right. So this is subdivision fiscal year 2022-0007 for quad 6 subdivision. We received resubmittals on December 5th and December 8th, 2022, which attempted to address the comments and concerns that the design review committee brought up, as well as staff during the November 7th hearing. During the previous design review committee meetings, the road within the subdivision was unclear as to whether or not it would be a private or public road. We've since gotten a staff report from ACHD confirming that they reviewed the common drive as a private driveway and not being under ACHD's ownership. The developer has increased the landscape buffer within so the landscape buffer between the driveway pavement and the adjacent western property boundary line. I will pull it up on here. So this is the updated landscape plan showing that increased landscape buffer between the property and the western, which is shown as the up portion or the upper portion of this document. It was previously proposed as a 1-foot buffer, but it is now a 3-foot buffer. The developer did try to implement the guest parking stalls within that common driveway like previously discussed, but it just wasn't possible based off of the fire review comments and regulations, as the applicant mentioned here today. The new increased width of this landscape buffer allows for vertical landscaping, which also provides a screening concept to this vehicular driveway. It screens it from the adjacent residential property to the west, which is in the upper portion of this document. Site plans show an increased front yard landscape buffer area adjacent to Adams Street. The width is the requested 10 feet as opposed to the previous 5 feet. A new architectural plan has also been provided to include elevation relief between the residences in an attempt to demonstrate a variety of architectural features. Furthermore, the street side elevation of Unit 1 has been updated and the interior site plan has been adjusted to allow for those additional fenestrations. So on my screen, it would be, this is showing Unit 1 that is facing Adams Street. The subdivision also has changed in its proposed lots. So instead of being a 9-lot subdivision, it is now an 8-lot subdivision with 1 common lot and 7 residential lots. The residential lots have not changed. However, there is 1 less common lot simply because Instead of having a common lot running along the pedestrian pathway to the east, they have decided to extend those property lines to that eastern property line and put an easement over the pedestrian pathway. For the updated planned unit development waivers, we have 4 waivers in total, but there are some sub waivers within those categories. So the first one being a waiver to allow for more than 4 units on a common drive. The second waiver is a reduction of setbacks. So it is to allow for a 0-foot side yard setback of lots 4 and 6. The third waiver is to guest parking, to allow it to be within the driveways, as well as the request to allow for an 8-foot by 15-foot compact car parking space, as opposed to the required 10 by 20. And then there is an additional waiver asking for a reduction in the required garage width. Garage widths being 2 car garages side by side, it needs to be 20 by 20, whereas the garages proposed are 19.8 feet by 20 feet. There also needs to be a waiver conditioned in the decision document. It was not mentioned in the drafted decision document, so it's in relation to lot 1. The requested setback is for a 5-foot/10-foot setback, which differs just slightly from the code required 10-foot/20-foot. The reason why I'm saying slash in the 5 by 20 or the 5 by 10 is because the 5-foot is for the front door or porch or front facade, whereas the 10-foot as requested would be for the garage portion of that facade. Code requires that there be a 20-foot setback between the property line and the garage, but this property is proposing 10 feet for the garage. And I also wanted to mention a clarifying point. And so while this application is a planned unit development, it is not required to provide a variety of housing types. So be it townhomes, duplexes, patio homes, multifamily or single family units. That variety is not required because it is technically under the 10 dwelling unit threshold set forth by Garden City Code 86B7. However, part of the proposed statement of the planned unit development is to provide a maximum choice of living environments by allowing a variety of housing and building types. While the application does not provide a variety of housing types, it is providing a variety of living environments through the different floor plans provided. Staff has drafted different conditions of approval, which will be required to be met prior to permits being released. Items such as landscaping and waivers have been drafted, but any condition related to the design of the site or the structures will need to be conditioned by the committee. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
I don't have any. Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, our engineer is on Zoom if there's any technical questions.
Okay. And to clarify, we had the applicant for this subdivision, Bill, he announced that the engineer is on Zoom. So in the rebuttal portion, if you have any questions, technical questions, you can ask at that point. But did you have any questions for myself? No. Okay. And so with that, we can move into the public testimony portion of the hearing. I will note that during these remote meetings, for those of you who are in Zoom, we ask that if you do wish to provide public testimony, you can utilize the raise your hand feature so that we can clearly see you and call on you. If that is a difficult task, if you do make motions or a noise and speak up, we will be able to hear you and call on you. But first, is there anyone here in the audience that wishes to provide public testimony? Nope. All right. And seeing none, we'll move to the Zoom attendance. Is there anyone here wishing to provide public testimony for this application? All right, I am seeing nobody. So with that, Bill, would you like to return for a rebuttal?
I think it would be great if Jade had something to add, because he's the one that's really technically more against. So I don't know if it's possible to have him provide an input.
Yeah, Jaden, since you're here on Zoom, Bill said that he'd prefer if you provided a rebuttal or any clarifying remarks.
Sure, no problem. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. Sorry, just for the record, Jaden Schneider, the applicant with Bronze Bow. There was just a couple comments, Hannah, that you had made that I wanted to clarify on the waiver requests. First off was the 0-foot side yard setbacks for the interior buildings, the two buildings that front onto the open space. And this was a staff comment. If we wanted to make that lot line a 5-foot offset and then write in an easement in order to nullify the request for a 0-foot side yard setback, that's completely fine with on our side of things. So we can move those lot lines for lots 4 and lot 6 that are adjacent to the common lot in the emergency turnaround area. We had just written it with that 0-foot setback. And so if there's staff had proposed that that's potentially a better way to move forward, considering that having that 0-foot setback provides some potential issues from the building side of things down the road when we try to pull this technical building permit. So that one's that we're totally fine with changing if it makes more sense, and it's an easy, simple change for us. And then the garage widths themselves, if the lot lines between buildings for those interior buildings, so it would be lots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 5 and 6 are all 20 feet wide. So yes, it's that 19.8 is what we have shown right now. But if we need to move it out that 0.2 of a foot to make it that 20 and remove that easement, we should have room to do so. And if there are concerns with that, we can discuss that more. But those just are two that hopefully if staff or the design review committee has any worries about number of waivers, I think that those are two that we could quite easily adjust or make changes to and have before the next or the final meetings for this. But otherwise, yeah, I appreciate your time and reviewing the project. And if there are any more technical questions going forward or anything else that I can help provide with it, I'd be happy to. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Could you clarify what, just on your Adams Street elevation, the floor plan indicates some windows in the living space on the second floor, yet your elevation does not show anything?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. I was muted. Sorry, there are a few small discrepancies between the floor plan and the elevation. The elevations for what we have should govern. Basically, with all the going back and forth that we've been doing, trying to adjust and try to get everything up to date, I believe that there may have been some miscommunication just on my side of things with putting together the floor plans and everything. But my understanding is that the elevations themselves are the most up to date and should govern on all that. And I apologize that there is a discrepancy there. It's like I said, it's come back to this idea that we were trying to put everything together and have been through a few iterations of the process in order to try to come up with the best project that we can. So hopefully that helps provide a little clarity on that.
Yeah, it does clarify. I guess I would prefer that there's more fenestrations and eyes on the street than less. So
I don't think
Anyway.
from our end, I don't think that there's any problem with trying to, add a product that has more windows. It just as we're mentioning there. So if that's a comment and trying to increase that fenestration with something with windows, I think that that's something that we can totally work with and add to just make this plan any better.
Okay. Thanks.
And I do know that that Bill may be able to add a few extra comments to that. He's been working directly with the architect exactly on this. So if he wants to, he's more than happy to.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So this is Bill Tillman again. Yeah, so looking at that elevation, that's a great catch. There should be windows up there on that second level. We wouldn't build a plan that didn't have windows on one side there. So especially with townhomes, you definitely want to capture as much natural light as you can, because those interior lots, you can't have windows on those sides. So good catch. And we definitely wouldn't build a unit or a house without windows there. So there would definitely be windows. Probably if you go back to one of our previous elevations that we had, where we did have some windows up there. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, yeah. Just, I mean, even if you look at the southeast elevation of that same floorplex, there's some square high windows on that side in the living room component. What it looks like, or is it? Yeah. So seems to make some sense that there would be something there. So that's
Absolutely.
fine.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I think that's it, unless there's any other further questions.
I don't have any.
Nope.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to close the public hearing and open it up to the committee members for discussion.
Yeah, I'll get going. I think, Brett, that was the biggest catch there, is windows on that second level. And I think we can maybe just condition that to be, glazing equal to the main level, or glazing, some glazing in each one of those blocks of siding to get some windows on the street side. And then I maybe want to adjust with that grade change. If there is a grade change, maybe those garage windows can come down to a human scale, because those seem kind of up in the sky once we drop grade, that 3-foot drop in grade or whatever it is. So I think that glazing could be conditioned as such. If we were going to move this forward, I think the waivers are all legitimate, and they all work for me as far as the compact stalls and tandemness of them. There is more parking than actually required as we kind of stack it up in front of the garage there. So those all seem fine. One concern I had, and I'm not sure, it may have to do with the property lines too, is the landscape plan shows landscaping between each of the double bays of parking. And I would just want a condition or some wording in the approval document that is maintained and controlled. I can't remember from the property line if that's common area or if that's individual owners. And if it is individual owners, does the property line bisect that landscape strip in essence? And if so, then that makes it even harder to maintain it and keep it green and whole, let alone, trucks driving over shrubbery. So something so that when we come back and look at this in 5 years, there is a kind of landscape buffer in between each one of these, because without that, we have 15 feet of parking and then all of this driveway, and it's just one massive block of asphalt. So I'd like to see that developed into actual landscaping and be alive 5 years from now.
Yeah, does this driveway then continue on for access for another parcel in the back? Is that,
Yeah, this was the
was this
one that
that
has the
property?
right of way
Okay,
back to that commercial spot,
gotcha.
not across the parking, but the drive itself.
Yeah, I would agree with your comments there. Another one that I would add though is on that street side elevation. Talking about the if there is a grade change there, that just we don't have stepped foundation walls along the street like the elevation shows, that any kind of exterior cladding or veneer kind of follows whatever that grade is, if there's a change in grade.
Yeah, so it's not just exposed concrete.
Yeah,
But yeah, as far as that elevation goes, I do appreciate the effort that went into making it look like a street side elevation. I think it was successful. Got roof changes, roof pitch changes, siding changes, 3D elements. So I think that was successful.
I would agree. So do you have a motion that you want to make on this one?
Sure. And Hannah, do you need any more information as far as what we were talking about as far as the windows are concerned? Is that clear enough?
I think it's clear enough. From my notes, I have 3 conditions that you were just discussing. One, the additional fenestrations on lot 1, having additional glazing address the street. The second being with the grade changes, not having exposed foundation and having that facade treatment essentially continue upon the grade. And then the third being landscaping between the drive shall be maintained by the HOA. I would like to mention that an additional condition needs to be drafted within the waivers. Which would be the 5-foot/10-foot front setback for lot 1 to allow for the garage to be where it is proposed.
Yep. So those conditions and the additional conditions, and if you want to call them waivers, would be included in a motion to approve fiscal year 2022-0007 as drafted.
I'll second that.
And all those in agreement?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, thank you. And we will see you at planning and zoning. Thanks. So moving on to our second action item, we have old business subdivision fiscal year 2022-0008 for Chandler's Place. Nicolette Womack is requesting new construction of 12 single-family townhomes and 2 fourplex buildings located at 401 East 52nd Street. Nicolette, are you presenting today?
Hi, and it's actually Joe Dodson with Kimley-Horn. I'm taking over, I guess, so to speak, for the presentation components of this. I'm new to Kimley-Horn, so bear with me. I'm used to the public side, not the private, but glad to be here this afternoon.
Well, it's nice to meet you. Thank you. And you can share your screen if you're
Sure.
want to.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you. As I said, my name is Joseph Dodson. I go by Joe. Our address here is 1100 West Idaho Street, Suite 210 here in Boise, Idaho. The applicant team for this project includes the developer, Mr. Russell, as well as our engineering teams, Abby and Kelly. Nicolette and I are planners with Kimley Horn, and we have the architect, Jennifer Moore, as well on the call. So any of the questions that you may have, any of us are available to answer those questions for you. Just a quick overview of the timeline that got us here. As you know, projects always have a lot of time and commitment on, in the background. So even before the pre-app, right? So June, we had the pre-app meeting, the neighborhood meeting in August with a quick submittal in August as well. Here before you tonight with the design review hearing, and then P&Z on Wednesday with a January council date. Here's just a larger overview of where the site is located. It is at East 52nd Street, a few blocks removed from Chinden, and also a few blocks away from the Greenbelt near the fairgrounds. Future land use map designates this property as mixed use residential with, I believe your comp plan designates it with an overlay of the Main Street corridor, as well as a activity node for the commercial neighborhood. So this designation, especially the Main Street corridor, calls for density and height along this main corridor, which we are providing with our proposed project. Zoning for the property is R3, which is medium density residential. It has a maximum density of 35 units per acre and a minimum of 14 units per acre within that noted commercial node within the comp plan. So again, no rezone is being requested with this. It's already zoned R3. This is just a zoomed in aerial of the site showing the little more specific representation of uses around it. So to the north, you have detached single family. To the east, you have some duplexes. To the west are industrial uses. To the south is a lot that's worth noting. It's a right-of-way lot owned by ACHD, and it is encumbered by numerous public utility easements. And it is difficult to see, but there's also at the very southeast corner of the site, it's an Intermountain Gas regulator site or lot. So that also is an encumbrance to the site. Here we have just an overview of our project, right? It does include the applications before you tonight, which are combined preliminary and final plat, which is being processed as a PUD and design review. It does meet all required access, fire turnaround, and dimensional standards, except for those noted within the PUD request, which are essentially to the interior setbacks. Each lot has minimum of 3.5 foot setbacks, with one lot having 6.5 feet on the front, which would be this unit here, delineated by the purple color. Property is about 0.7 acres. We are requesting single family attached and single family detached units for a total of 12 units. Access is provided via a private street, not a common drive. That was kind of discussed both ways within the staff report, and I understand me reviewing it, coming in late, I understand the discrepancies there myself. So, but it is a private street, 26 foot wide, which meets their ACHD, meets the Ada County private street standards, ACHD private street standards as well as Garden Cities. Density is approximately 17.5 units per acre, and again, the existing zoning is R3. In addition, I'd like to note that we will be continuing the detached sidewalk along East 52nd to align with the existing detached sidewalk to the north. Here's our parking exhibits. Did red and green because Christmas is around the corner. Red is for our guest spaces. 6 are required. We're providing 5 internal to the site and 1 along East 52nd. As you can tell, we probably fit 2 or 3 more along East 52nd. Also, the green delineates the enclosed required parking, which is 2 per unit. I would also like to note with the parking, one of the other waivers as part of the PUD is a reduction in the width of the parking space for the guest parking only. So Garden City Code requires 10 by 20. We are just requesting a 1 foot reduction on the width for 9 by 20 for each of the guest spaces. In the staff report, it was noted that we did not submit an open space exhibit. And so this is we did send this to Hanna prior to the hearing. I believe we sent it at least middle of last week. We know that Hannah's very busy, so unfortunately we did not get a response back, but this is our open space exhibit. showing the open space that we are proposing. This is just a layout of the project since we have a few different building types within the site. We have 5 different floor plans technically. The type A, which are going to be these 2 detached units here, are both 4-story and detached units. Then you have building B, which is closest to Allworth and 52nd. It's also 4-story and detached. Then you have the 4-plexes. With this 4-plex is 100% 4-story. This has 4-story for these 3, and it drops down to 3-story here. And then we have a 3-story detached here. The developers decreasing the height along the north boundary, specifically at the request, and to be sensitive to the neighbor to the north. That neighbor didn't meet with us during the neighborhood meeting, and we exchanged emails. Tentatively, they were supportive of the project so long as we provided a fence along the north boundary, which we are proposing a 6-foot vinyl fence or whatever fence is consistent with city code, as well as dense shrubbery of the evergreen variety along the north boundary to help create a nice buffer between. I will note, and Hannah may not know this already, but the original submittal did depict building 1 right here as a 4-story, and this as a 3-story. That was just a mistake on our part. We flipped those, so this is a 4-story here, and building 1 is now a 3-story. At this time, I want to discuss the unit variation, which is directly tied to what I just discussed with both the different heights of the buildings, as well as the different square footages for each, specifically the bedroom counts. They range from 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms, which I noted the number of stories, as well as the general location of the different buildings, interior and units, right? And then also the attached versus detached units, which we find comply with the requirements of the PUD. At this time, I will hand it over to our architect, Jennifer, to discuss the elevations in more detail.
Hi there. Let me know if you can't hear me, but I think you can. So my name is Jennifer Moore. I'm with Collab Architects, 750 West Bannock Street, number 611, Boise, Idaho. So we wanted to kind of walk you through some of the elevations and some of the floor plans, show you some of the variation that is really important to Garden City and how that unit, the variety of housing is being provided through the architecture and through the flexibility. And so what you have here are not necessarily what this is going to look like, but where we took our inspiration from. So some of these kind of, modulation in the facade moves that are going on here, the shadow lines, some of the changes in material and some of the mass look. This is really where we started to take some of our inspiration from, and what you're going to see in the next few pages. Some of those details come into play there. So Joe, you can next slide, please. And so as Joe kind of walked you through, we've got 5 different unit types. And then they're dispersed kind of through there, keeping those lower heights towards that neighbor, and then some of those taller units more towards the corner on Allworth. Next slide, please. And so this is the Allworth street side elevation. We did receive comments about the variation in the depth and kind of the lack of modulation in that. And so to address some of that, we've added some shadow lines, we've added some trim pieces, some depth to some of that gray volume that you'll see in a few later slides, to kind of really add articulation, add a little bit more detailing to maybe bring in some human scale and kind of break up some of that perceived flatness. Next slide, please. And so this is the 52nd Street view. Obviously, the shorter unit is next to the neighbor on the left side, and then working its way back up to those 4-story units. And we really wanted to create a cohesive development while still giving many units something just a little bit different to help kind of make it a little bit distinct, and just provide a product that was a little bit different than what we're seeing in Garden City. And so focusing on that kind of gray material as maybe a larger mass, and then that teal material as more of a carved away or kind of an accent that's really a relief from that gray material. Next slide, please. And so this is where we'll start to get into more of the nitty gritty, and this is that kind of building D elevation. And so what this one is one of our smaller units, but just providing some of that modulation, the materials here, it's that gray material is more of a it's kind of a gray scale. So there would be more than one. It won't show as flat as it's showing here. It'll have variation to it. It'll have, you know, different shades of gray in that sort of fiber cement or glass fiber reinforced plank product. Then the vertical metal panel or vertical corrugated metal panel would just be kind of a teal or a spruce color or something like that, just to kind of add a little bit of color, maybe a little bit of kind of uniqueness to the project. Other than that, we've just got the solar panels on the roof, and that really fits in with some of the sustainability measures that we're trying to go for here. Next slide, please. And same thing here. These units, because some of them are 4 stories, we've chosen to take that top story and really set it back where we can. And so on some of those the street faces, they are, you know, perceived as taller, but on the interior, you've got some roof decks and things like that are starting to really provide some relief from some of that height, especially on the sort of interior and the sides. And then we've also been introducing some plate steel or plate product type railings, just to kind of play on depth, shadow lines, and things like that. Again, some trim work, as you'll see in a couple later slides, just to add depth, add shadows, shading to those south facing windows. Next slide, please. And then a similar scenario happening here. This is another one of our detached single families. Similar language, same thing here. And so this is the one unit that abuts that neighbor. We have the unit kind of lowered to that 3-story. Again, that top level is set back on both sides. So that top level really is very minimal, and it will be perceived for the most part on that, or the intention is for it to be perceived for the most part on that neighbor's side as a 2-story level. The next slide, please. And then this is really the corner on Allworth as well. So really playing up that more Main Street kind of feel, more of an urban, a little bit taller, a little bit, you know, more with the roof decks and things like that, just because you don't have those neighbors as much. The next slide, please. And so this is where we really wanted to show some of that depth that we're trying to add in. So you'll see here kind of some of those shadow lines that we're talking about, some of those awnings and other little trim pieces that really help provide depth. They'll provide thickness to both that gray mass and provide kind of a recessed appearance to that teal mass. The next slide, please. And so these are a little bit just closer shots of some of those details. You can see there's a few inches of recess in that teal, those L-shaped shade panels kind of coming out a little bit, just to help provide some shade, help provide maybe a little bit of character to those buildings, and because they're on the south side, help provide some energy savings. And so for the floor plans, the thing that we wanted to really depict here and emphasize was kind of some flexibility that we've designed into these floor plans. I know that, you know, an easy metric to measure is bedroom count and product type, but one thing that we did want to kind of portray here was kind of the flexibility that's been designed into just the floor plans themselves. And so you'll see this kind of all throughout, where this first floor space is a flex space, and that's intended to be used in however the resident chooses to use it. And so it could be an office space, it could be a startup space, it could be a bedroom, a guest room, maybe even kind of a work from home space. But it really is intended to provide a lot of flexibility. And I think that is something that's really unique to this particular floor plan, and also just unique to the complex in general, that ground level could be activated very differently depending on the resident. Next slide. And so similar here. Another thing that we wanted to emphasize was bedrooms on different levels. And so right well, here you're seeing a bedroom on level 3 and level 4, maybe one on level 1. But that second level is fully livable space. Some floor plans, you'll see a bedroom on that second level. So just activating different levels, different spaces, providing patios in different areas, just to get a little bit of different sort of views, people using different areas kind of throughout that. Similar thing here. I think we can probably put here. And again, similar. Yep. And then, yeah, the last slide for the architectural portion, I think, is just some interiors inspiration. This isn't necessarily what it will end up looking like, but kind of moving from the outside and designing in and just making sure that they're cohesive and they kind of fit the user group that we feel could be interested in, you know, a product that's near the green belt, near the expo, near something like that, you know, something that's clean, light and bright, but a little bit, you know, kind of unique to it. And so not necessarily what it would look like, but just some kind of spring point ideas, I guess.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicants?
Sorry, Hannah, I wasn't quite done.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Just real quick, I just wanted to thank you guys for your time and appreciate meeting you all. We respectfully request action tonight and recommendation of approval for this design review application to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions for the applicants?
So just a quick question, Jennifer, the kind of the recessed windows, that is an actual kind of tapered recess into the depth of a wall. It's not just a 3D siding trick, right?
So the recess, you're talking about the recess, kind of that tan area, or not the tan area?
Yeah, on the elevations, it looks like the windows are kind of set into a cavity from the outside.
Yes, so there's a few different window kind of trim methods. Some of them are a little bit more flush. The intent is either to be, if they are flush, they'll either be trimmed out or they'll have kind of a.
Can I interrupt you real quick, Jennifer? It's really difficult to hear your audio.
Oh, is that better?
We might need it to move closer to yours.
Also, this is Mark Russell, and I was going to say, Jennifer, you actually sounded pretty good when you were on your computer, but when you moved to Joe's, it was not good.
Duly noted.
All right, is that a little bit better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
All right,
just this,
apologies.
like
So
specifically
yeah,
the
exactly.
ones where
So
it
it's
looks
not
like,
really a trick of the model or anything like that. The intent is to provide some relief and to help kind of emphasize those punched openings. I hope that answers your question.
it does. Thank you. Thanks. Oh yeah, so like on this page, on the middle, the south axon, that top right window. Yeah, so that's actually kind of a recessed window, and we're seeing the siding tapered in.
Gotcha. So right now that is just a trim, and it's just kind of a forced perspective trim.
Okay,
If there
okay.
is availability in the depth of that wall system, we would like to kind of recess that in. But depending on the depth of that wall system, it could just be a forced perspective with the trim.
Got it. I suspected as much, but wanted to hear it, because it does make it look like a deep recess, like in a straw bale home or something. So I was just confirming what was going on. I like it both ways. It is a good trick of the eye, and it works.
I don't have any questions.
right, and if there's no further questions, I will proceed to give my staff report. All right, so this application is subdivision fiscal year 2022-0008. It is a subdivision application that is to be processed as a planned unit development. And as a planned unit development, the applicant can submit waivers to code standards such as minimum setbacks to allow for different setback dimensions, for allowing a greater number of lots to be accessible off of a common drive, and proposing non-compliant parking space sizes. However, the applicant has not formally submitted a list of waivers to which they're requesting as part of this planned unit development. A section of the planned unit development code requires that in any development that which proposes 10 or more dwelling units shall provide a variety of housing types. The proposed variety shall include attached units such as townhomes and duplexes, detached units such as patio homes, and single family and multifamily units, provided that the overall density limit of the district is still maintained. This application does not propose a variety of housing types, in that all 12 units are 2 or 3, or I guess 3 or 4 story townhomes of similar architectural design. The townhomes, while appearing similar in exterior elevations, do provide a variety of different floor plans, with it being 3, 4, and 5 bedroom floor plans, and a 4th bedroom being a potential office space. Please note that during the January 19th, 2021 meeting, the Design Review Committee discussed the criteria related to the requirement for a variety of housing to be provided when utilizing the planned unit ordinance. The Design Review Committee reviews architectural variety, design, and aesthetics, whereas the Planning and Zoning Commission reviews the variety of housing types such as multifamily, townhomes, patio homes, etc. The application is just over 17 units per acre, which is under the 35 dwelling units per acre maximum within the R3 zoning district. And it's also above the 16 units per acre minimum of the neighborhood destination activity node. The proposed single family attached and detached residential units are consistent with the purpose identified in the R3 zoning district. Waivers have been drafted by staff based off of the analysis of the application. The waivers that were drafted include the first being a waiver to setback standards, allowing for a minimum of a 3.5 foot interior to the development setback, which creates a 7-foot separation between structures. The second waiver being to allow for more than 4 dwelling units to be accessed off of the common drive. And then the third waiver is a parking space dimensional standards waiver, allowing for a 9-foot by 20 parking space stall as opposed to the 10-foot by 20. Conditions have been drafted in the decision document to require code compliance of issues that might not have been addressed in their initial submittal packet or any of their resubmittals to address staff's drafted staff report. Code conflicts that have been conditioned for compliance include the utilities. So the on-site and right-of-way utilities found adjacent to 52nd Street conflict with the sidewalk that is proposed to be along with West 52nd Street. The utility pole is bisecting the sidewalk. And the existing overhead utilities conflict with the proposed street trees. So a draft condition of approval is provided requiring that all the utilities be undergrounded, which is in compliance with 8488 Garden City Code. And it also has been conditioned to require that the utilities that are to be undergrounded do not conflict with the class 2 or 3 frontage trees that are required of this area. An additional draft is conditioned to require that each lot is connected to city services. Discussion is required regarding the architectural design features of the dwelling units. So building type A and B are located closest to East 52nd Street, with the front being the west facade facing the street. The front facade appears to consist of a front porch and a direct pathway to the proposed sidewalk along East 52nd, which is in compliance with code. Building type B and building 6 unit C1 located along the southern property boundary line have side elevations that face south to North Adams, or also known as Allworth Street. There is no direct connection to Allworth Street from these dwelling units. And there is an ACHD right-of-way easement disconnecting the subdivision from the roadway, which is not to be developed upon. Connections to these units are proposed internal to the development via the pedestrian pathway, which further connects to East 52nd Street. Side elevations of these structures that face Allworth Street consist of windows. However, they appear to lack modulation and some fenestrations. As far as parking goes, the site is compliant so long as the one off-site, or rather on-street parking space, is counted towards that 30 parking space minimum requirement. They have 29 on-site with 1 on-street parking space. However, by utilizing the 1 space on-street, it is not guaranteed that ACHD is to keep that on-street parking available. They can revoke the ability to have on-street parking at this location at any point in time with staff's knowledge. There is a condition requiring that 2 bicycle parking spaces are required within the subdivision on common open space areas. And although pedestrian circulation is present throughout the development, the obvious connections across the private drive are lacking. So it has been conditioned within the drafted decision document to require some kind of hardscaping or painting to identify those pedestrian crossings. And as mentioned earlier, there are required street trees along East 52nd Street. It'll be required to have a 6 or 8 foot landscape buffer between the roadway, the right of way, and the sidewalk. And so these street trees are required to go within that landscape buffer. It's required, or the project is required to have 4 street trees. There are 4 street trees proposed. However, the type of tree doesn't necessarily meet the intent of what a street tree is supposed to meet. So it's been conditioned that 4 class 2 or 3 street trees with a large and or high and wide branching canopy is provided upon approval of permits. And as far as landscaping goes, so as this is not a multifamily development, this is indeed a single family attached and detached residential subdivision. Perimeter landscaping is not required. However, there is some perimeter landscaping shown along the northern property boundary line, but along the eastern property boundary line, as you'll see on my screen that I'm presenting here, there is no additional landscaping provided. There is an existing fence along the eastern property boundary line, but given these are tall structures, there might be some privacy concerns. And lastly, as far as the common open space goes, the initial submittal documents did not have enough information for staff to review whether or not the common open space was compliant with code. The applicant did submit a new exhibit, which has been added to the record. However, staff was not able to analyze it thoroughly in time for this hearing today, but in quick in a quick analysis of it, it does appear compliant with code. However, just to be safe, there is still a condition drafted in the decision document to require compliance with Garden City Code. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
I don't have any.
I just have a quick one on the. Call it Allworth, call it Kent, call it Adams, that street there. Has there ever been any whispers or talks of that street alignment changing in any way, like Adams connecting to Remington and 52nd actually hitting Kent at a different angle?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
At this point in time, at least.
And Joe's shaking his head too, so that's all I needed to hear. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will open up the hearing for public testimony. Again, during these remote meetings, I would prompt that anyone attending via Zoom is able to utilize the raise hand feature. Otherwise, just raise your hand on the video screen or voice that you would like to provide public testimony if you can't find that raise your hand feature. But I'll start with anybody here in the audience. I have 2 sign-in sheets. So Diane Bevins, can you please come up to the dais? And please state your name, full name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Diane Bevins. I'm at 403 East 52nd Street. So we are the single family dwelling to the north of this development. And we appreciate all the changes that have been made at our request so far. Just so the design committee knows, we just finished building and moved into our home in April. So we are in a brand new home built through a conditional use permit, because we are the same zoning, but we got a conditional use permit to build just a single family home. So we're planning on being there a very long time. And we support the fencing and the landscaping along our property line to help with some privacy. I don't know if this can be accomplished, but since we're here, I appreciate that it's only 3 stories on the 2 end dwellings next to our property, but in an ideal world, if it was only 2 stories, so we're a single story, 2 stories, and transitioning from the single family 1-story dwelling, if that was at all possible, that would be our only request. We do understand if it's not possible, but you can only say no, so we thought we'd ask. But we do appreciate all the considerations made so far as the only single family home adjacent to this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Does the committee have any questions for Diane? No. Okay. Thank you.
But one for you on that comment. Is the zoning unlimited height in that area?
Yes, I believe so. So it's zoned R3, and I can double check, so I'm not making an educated guess, but R3 does not have a maximum height. It's left blank in our code, which means it can be as high as appropriate.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and next up, I have a sign-in sheet from Dustin Bevins. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is Dustin Bevins, live at 403 East 52nd Street with Diane Bevins at just to the north of this property. I too, definitely appreciate all that the development's done for, fencing and landscaping. The question I have is, with the utilities being underground, how do you know how that's going to tie into our utilities? Reason I ask is the utility pole, and that is definitely in the way of the sidewalk that we were required to build too. And we've got 2 irrigation boxes there. So yeah, just wanted to see how that would tie in, if you guys know.
So the applicant will be able to provide a rebuttal and possibly answer your questions at
Okay.
that point in time.
Perfect. Yeah, the second question is, I don't know how this, I'm definitely new to this, but is there a way for us to discuss the plants or the shrubs that are being put in on the north end of the property? I don't know if that's a question for now or what, but
Right. We can also allow the applicant to provide a rebuttal to that question.
okay, perfect. Well, that was it. So thank you.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions for Dustin? No?
I do not.
All right. So with that, do we have anyone out in Zoom wishing to provide public testimony? Seeing nobody. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant team to provide a rebuttal to any of the questions.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Commission. You guys still hear me okay? Okay, good. There's a lot of things to unpack there, but just initially I want to thank the neighbors for coming and providing testimony. We've enjoyed working with them as well, and I know I haven't personally met you all, but I'm sure I will here soon. With their questions for the underground utilities, again, we are going to underground those along our frontage. How those specifically tie in at near their property, we can't speak to right now, only because we're gonna have to coordinate with Idaho Power, right? We're gonna have to make sure that we meet their standards, and whatever's going to occur near the property line will have to be approved by Idaho Power. So I don't have those specific construction requirements before you tonight, but it will be taken care of and comply. Secondly, with the height differential, we definitely understand the concern. However, this property is an infill property, and we are at least 18 feet away from their home, which is a pretty far distance for infill properties, and most of the time you're going to have 0 lot lines or 10 feet. So we do appreciate that, and if any changes would occur in the future, again, the developer and our team will work with the neighbors and see what transpires as we move forward. But as of right now, we are sticking with our current proposal of those 3 stories. And then I would like to note, and Jennifer maybe able to speak to this more later on, just that upper story of these 3-story units are largely supposed to be a roof deck and not something that's going to be as imposing as a true 3-story building would be. Secondly, to Hannah's staff report and our comments that she made, we did submit a comment response letter to you guys. I hope that got into the record for you, where we went kind of line by line through those conditions. I do have that available if you guys want to go through that now. But I did address many of those comments, specifically regarding the utilities and the landscaping along 52nd. In general, we did note that we agree with all the conditions of approval, but just clarified a few of the specifics along within the staff report. So again, we will comply with those class 2 and class 3 requirements for the trees along 52nd. As noted, we believe that we've provided enough facade fenestration and modulation, especially with the revised drawings that we've provided tonight for those elevations, both along 52nd as well as those facing Allworth, despite not having direct access to Allworth, as we've also noted. Secondly, I would like to clarify that we are not using a common drive, so we are using a private street, so we don't need a PUD waiver for the number of units off of a common drive, because we're utilizing a private street, which does not have that same limitation on the number of units taking access from that private street. So again, it was used interchangeably, and I know it can be used interchangeably, but I did just want to clarify that for the commission. Moving on, we do appreciate Hanna drafting all of the waivers that we need in general. And as we noted in our response letter, we will provide those additional parking spaces within the common areas as conditioned. Sorry, I'm just looking through the document to make sure I hit everything for you guys. There was some discussion regarding naming the private street, which we will do, and we work with Ada County Street naming committee to do that as well. like to note that the CCNRs, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions for the property will outline the party responsible for the maintenance and repair of both the private street and all of the common areas, because those are all located on the same common lot. And for the pedestrian circulation throughout the development, we will provide a different material for those pedestrian crossings. So the private street is proposed as pavers to help with stormwater retention and drainage. And so we will provide just regular concrete across at least 2 points across the private street to provide clear delineated access for pedestrian crossings. We are going to comply with any required floodway permits that the property may or may not need. Again, as noted, we've discussed the tree species along 52nd. We will provide whatever's going to be required. We'll work with the landscape architect to do that, as well as the open space. We appreciate Hannah providing that testimony tonight on her initial review. And whatever the condition is, we will comply with and meet the minimum open space standards upon further review. Lastly, I'd say with the unit variation, again, we do believe that we comply with the PUD code for those 10 units or more by providing both attached and detached units. And the whole project being single family. However, you do have the variation of single family detached, single family attached, where the attached units may function and live more like multifamily, but still have the opportunity for personal ownership. With that, I will stand for any final questions that you all have, and do appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, do we have any questions for the applicant during his rebuttal?
I don't have any.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. Then I'll close the public hearing and open it up to the committee members for discussion.
I think that a couple comments. I'll just start with the Allworth Street side. Even though there is that large kind of division between the street and those side elevations, it still kind of feels like a street elevation. So I think that if we could condition some more fenestration on those 2 side facing units, kind of it is a garage, but if that elevation looks like it's kind of living space on that main level, I think that'll be more successful. And then one thing we've asked for in the past too is some glazing in the garage doors, just so that when we get kind of internal to these lots, that it's not a canyon of garage doors. It still feels more comfortable and welcoming and neighborly. Was another comment. Oh, on the site plan, I think it looks like there's a single parking spot kind of straight in as you come in first off the street, straight ahead. So I think you should address what that kind of first view is. We call it the terminal view when you turn into the project and you're looking straight ahead. What is that? What is that view? It's landscaping, it's sculpture, it's some feature that's not the butt end of a car sitting there. So let's look at that. And I think that's something that can be, addressed in a condition and then reviewed at the staff level, just so that it's more of a feature. It's more of kind of an entry presentation than just looking straight at parking. I think that's it, kind of some pretty straightforward ones. I think just as a general comment, as a whole, this is an attractive project. I mean, I think, the architect should be commended for it's contemporary, it's interesting. There's a lot of solid void. They've gone to, some lengths to make this an attractive project. And that's encouraging anywhere in Garden City, but I would say that on this site especially, because this is, I would hope, kind of a precedence for this area, which is going to have some, it's going to be unrecognizable in 15 years in this area. So to have a project like this that has intentionally been designed, and it's been designed well, I think that's an exciting kind of marker to put in the ground. We see a lot of subdivisions, a lot of 8, 12, 16 units, and they could be anywhere in the world. This is kind of setting a tone, and I think it's setting a good tone. So congrats to the team and the architects on this for giving us something interesting to look at.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's well done. I think there's been a lot of thought to the articulation of the facade and the variety of uses, or not uses, but the variety of housing types, let's just say, with just the different arrangements and variation. One of the comments I have along those lines is I think there's an opportunity here that is missed in maybe providing a little bit more variety in whether it's that that corrugated metal siding, variety in color a little bit, maybe from unit to unit, something where you've carried through with one material that maybe is a consistent material, and maybe that's the gray material that carries through, but then there's an opportunity to vary that other material element to create a little more variety from structure to structure, or between the rear structures or something. Right now, just everything is two-tone and it's all the same. I think there's a little bit of a missed opportunity to create a little bit more variety and excitement in the design of the structures that you have. It's great and it's awesome. I just think that maybe there's another piece there that can be added that creates a little variation from structure to structure. Also, would just kind of like to understand, is there a fence there between that southern kind of that southern, let's say, right-of-way lot, or is it just, I'm not even familiar with how that lot looks, and is it pretty much just kind of this unkept thing that's hanging out there, and then all of a sudden we've got this low-lying landscape and shrubs, and here's this building? Or is there a fence element there that separates the two? I just from how that relationship is, we talked about, Derek, you mentioned it kind of feels like it still has some kind of relationship to the street, but really, what is that, and how is that right-of-way lot play into that? I mean, how does it make it feel? So when I looked at the landscape plan, it's really not very clear. It doesn't show any kind of fencing element there. So just kind of trying to understand that relationship.
And I'll jump in just so that we can kind of clarify and talk through that. There's to the east, there's like 40 feet of landscaping, and then there's a driveway. It's kind of like there was two right-of-ways and one, like, to flag lots, and one whole right-of-way is just landscaped. It's almost like a linear park. And so I would I would say, and kind of encourage that fence line be as minimal as possible and even see-through, and then they can, take advantage of this neighbor's, landscape bill. Because it's kind of a pretty element that the residents of this new development could, have as they're walking up the kind of the lot line. There's this big long landscape strip beside them. So I would encourage them not to kind of block that off. It's not a codified thing, but it's something that just would be it's almost an amenity that's already there.
And that is actually on that, when I look at the aerial, that's actually on that right of way lot that you're talking about. Kind of that in between East
Yeah.
52nd, where it comes into Alworth, right there on that corner.
Yeah, it almost looks like no, this is going, let's call it north-south on the east side of the lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I was talking even more so about, okay, what's happening on that piece that's on the south side? And
On the ACHD.
Exactly, the ACHD right of way piece.
Yeah, that's just a goat head lot. And who knows? That's a good question though, is can this developer encourage that to be finished in some way or participate in the finishing of it?
Well, I just trying to kind of understand your comment with more fenestrations, and it feels like it has a relationship to that street, but really, does it?
Yeah. I mean,
I'd like to see, yeah, it's great. Let's have some more fenestrations and things on there.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, just from the aerial and looking, it's really kind of removed.
Yeah,
From that.
I guess
whole
my
street.
biggest concern I brought up earlier was, does that road get realigned later? And then we do have a sidewalk and then this building is a few feet from it, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So there's just kind of this weird gas pipe, Intermountain gas access lot.
Uh-huh.
I guess we can ask for the fenestration, and I think it would help the project overall and not come at great expense.
Yeah, and then other elements I really don't have other than the staff's draft conditions, which appears that the applicants agree with and don't take exception to. So-
Derek, you're muted if you're trying to talk to us.
That was such good dialogue too. So I think that if we talked about glazing in the garage doors, fenestration on the street side, and then addressing the terminal view coming in on the first leg of the drive. If that means eliminating guest parking, I think there's enough overall that could be a landscaped area with some sort of feature that we're kind of presented with as we come in that drive. If staff can kind of review those, condition those, I don't think we'd need to have this come back.
Derek, are you proposing a additional waiver or condition allowing for the deficiency in parking if the terminal view can't be fixed? With that
I'd
parking
rather
space?
see a waiver for that than have the entry be facing parking. I see two heads nodding, so
Oh, yeah, I would agree.
I'll make a motion to approve fiscal year 2022-0008 as conditioned and as discussed.
I will second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good project.
Yeah, good luck. Have fun with it.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Bye, good night. All right, and moving on to the next item, it is a new business item. Design review fiscal year 2022-0020. Jeff Likes is requesting new construction of structures for an industry flex use located at West State Street. Ada County parcel numbers are 8448760010 and all condo parcels within. Jeff, are you ready to present?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome. Well, hey, yes. Well, thanks for meeting with us. I know we met with you guys a couple months ago to look at this project, kind of just in a pre-design stage. We've taken some of those comments and some of the staff report comments, and now we're back. I understand we're probably a little bit ahead of where we should be, as Hannah stated out in the staff report. We don't have a conditional use yet at this point. But we talked about, you know, if this use and the design looks good to the staff, then we would go ahead and pursue the conditional use for the flex use allowed. If the flex use doesn't pass, we'll go back in with just an office use. This is an allowed use there. But they really like the look of this building. So that's kind of what we're doing first. To go through the staff report, everything there, I mean, I'll address each of the items that the staff report needed addressed. So item 1 was site condition number 4. It talked about and I know this is probably ahead of the game too, but it talked about the ownership of this parcel. I just got some ownership information from the owners. It's weird that the Ada County says this is owned by Tyron Condominium. That was actually dissolved in 2010, purchased by Rock Canyon Business Park. They've sent me their quick claim deed for that. So I've sent that over to Hannah probably an hour ago. So that's kind of off and in your inbox, Hannah, along with the affidavit from them as well, because that was one thing that you needed on there. So hopefully that resolves that first item. The next item were the pedestrian connections. And we do have a revised landscape plan, which I received on the 12th. So I sent that over, and that would have been a late settle. I don't know if you guys have that in your packet or not, but hopefully it's on the screen for you right now. Yeah, thanks. So you can see where it talked about pedestrian connectivity on there. And so you can see where we've connected all these buildings back to the public right of way, which was one of the conditions. And I believe you guys had asked about it as well. So we do have this in there, and hopefully that will resolve that concern there. Item number 2 was the front facades. Let me bring that one up for you. We had initially kind of had a lot of this as we had a little bit of metal, but most of it was stucco. I believe it was Brett that had really talked about, hey, if we're going to make this metal, let's make this, you know, an industrial type use. And so we've gone back and added all of this. Let me show you. We do have a rendering. It's probably in your packet. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So we've increased the metal, couple different colors of metal, still kept the sides the same, as the stucco to match the buildings that are still on the site. But really turn this into maybe, you know, make all that metal stand out and make it work there. Just switching back screens here. And then I know part of the discussion will be, or Hannah's talked about how the flex use does require a conditional use. But yet it allows quite a big flexibility in uses, which maybe aren't necessarily compatible with a close neighborhood, which is directly to our south. So we're going to propose during our conditional use to do a development agreement to limit some of the uses that aren't compatible with, you know, close neighbors to residential. And I think that would help satisfy that quote unquote, you know, all of the flex uses that are allowed in flex. Under code review, item number 1, we would just do we're going to talk, we have to do a complete conditional use, which we understand. Item number 2, which is 8-2B3. There are 10 lots available currently today per the plat. As part of that, we would be increasing our lots to 14 as of what we have right now per our current design. We have 14 spaces, and that's what we would do, a replat or update the plat to make those the 14 uses or 14 lots. The next one, item 3, 8-2C-24, again, is that flex uses. We just propose that we'll do a development agreement to limit those uses. There was a second one on there that talked about mechanical units screened from public view. Yes, we will screen all of them. The units will either be internal or on top of the roof. We'll do a well or something back in there to house those mechanical units. They talked about item 4, stormwater on the site. Our site is, well, it's all existing. These are just pad ready sites. So stormwater is done, grading's done. All of that is all existing and works. And so there'd just be a minor, if anything, there'd just be a minor change to that on there. Number 5 talked about utilities. All of our utilities are already stubbed to this site because it is a pad ready site. 8-4C-3 talked about the glazing, particularly on the north building, which is the little building. It's the one that sits most north on the most north on the property. And we did not break down our glass front or glass, but I can tell you right now that the percentage of glass is 19% of that front wall area with that. So hopefully that will help clarify that. We have 1,188 square feet of wall frontage on the front, and we have 224 square feet of glass. So it's about 19% of glass. So that should help clarify that. Again, there's some site connectivity, which we talked about on the new landscape plan. That actually goes into a few things. There is a connection, 84I-4, a revised site plan, which we did send in on 12/12. If you don't have it, I can resend it for that as well. Again, the parking lot, I want to bring up, we did talk about on the initial parking lot. So initially we had, we were going to remove all of this parking in front. We've gone back, put that back in, and actually increased. So there is a little bit of rework of the site right here. We've added some more landscaping islands and reworked the striping, and reworked a little bit of the site in this corner to allow for a little bit of extra units in there. But we've increased the patio, the sidewalk out front.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff,
Yeah.
can you, because this isn't really reflected on those images, the 3D images that you have. So
Right.
Why don't
right.
you explain what's going on there? Because I'm looking at the images, I'm seeing a lot of asphalt up to these garage doors, and and so this is completely different from that. How does this facilitate the connectivity? Is there just like a rolled curb there, or what's going on between that parking and the front facade?
Right.
What is
And I
all
was
that?
actually going to just get there, Brett, but
Okay.
you're right. We have not added in this parking. Again, it was a late deal. Hopefully you can see that revised landscape plan here. And I can show you. So we'll have parking up front. We will have a flush curb and then go into asphalt. That way they can access these overhead doors if they need to. But everything will be flush curb. So we've reworked all of the parking at the front of the building. Whoops. At the front of the building, we still have all of it. We still maintain our clearances of drive aisles and everything from north to south. But we've just increased this patio sidewalk out front. Along with our park.
So is that concrete there between the edge of parking and the front facade, like it's hatched, or is it, yeah, all that right there?
Yeah, it'll be a complete new concrete.
Okay.
But yes, it's a whole new sidewalk. Right now, it's nothing. In fact, it kind of sits back in here. So we're increasing it. Yes, and it is a concrete,
Okay.
not a concrete sidewalk, concrete patio out front with a flush curb to the asphalt parking area with that, or rolled curb, either way, something you can get over, mountable curb on that area. Hopefully that'll kind of help clarify what we're doing here.
Well, yeah, I'm just kind of looking at it going, okay, so if I got people parking out there, and what's the access to those roll up doors? What kind of is the idea that you're going to have tenants be pulling in and out of those roll ups, but yet you've got parking stalls out there?
Right. I don't think at this point, these are real, right now with some of the flex uses that we're going to go for, it's not going to be something they pull in and out of, at all hours of the day when people can park in front of their building, because they could get parked there. They could even park, in front of their building. It's more or less like after hours, to go in and out of your space. These roll up doors are really that people love the roll up door now. Whether it's an office, roll them up, make it industrial looking. But yeah, there is parking in front of the overhead doors, and they'll have to work around whatever is parking there. And then, I guess that actually answers all of the questions on the staff report that they had. And hopefully I answered some of yours, Brad, on how we were going to handle, parking there. It's more or less just work around what's there. You're not parking there all hours of the night anyways. So people can access their space when they need to, if nobody's in front of their space. That pretty much wraps up everything we had. If there's any questions other than what we've already talked about.
Along the whole front edge of the building, there's like these little rectangles. And I'm not sure if those are connected, but on the rendering, it looks like there's a different shade of surface material there, which might be delineating a pathway. Is that the intention?
Yeah, so let's see here.
Aren't those just indicating where the canopies are?
Right, 100%.
gotcha.
Yeah. So if
Gotcha.
we're looking at, oh shoot, this isn't going away.
But that doesn't even hold true, because there should be canopies over those access doors, and
There's canopies here as well. Yeah, so these are just supposed to be canopy overhangs. They just didn't get transferred over all the way over the overhead doors. And those are some things we added last time as well from our initial meeting with you guys. We added all the, let's go back to the renderings. We added all the awnings all over the doors. But that, and this is just sign area here. So those are kind of just delineating signs,
So what's the white or lightest gray strip in front of the doors down at grade? Is that
Oh,
enough to be called kind of a pathway?
Well, so this rendering, like Brett was asking earlier, it actually comes clear out to here, the concrete does. So it goes out to
Okay.
the face of here. It's just the rendering never got updated per our latest plan. So if you look at the landscape plan and our site plan, you can see that we've got quite a big pathway sidewalk all the way in front of the whole building. And it runs all the way over and connects all the way across.
Okay.
And that'll all be
Okay.
concrete.
So that's not a drive aisle between parking
No.
and building. Okay.
No, right. This is all patio, concrete. Drive aisles are only up where they
Yeah.
exist. today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. No further questions.
Well, yeah, I guess this is just isn't this just a pre-app? Or,
No, this is the formal hearing.
oh, this is a formal hearing?
Yeah, I believe we're in for formal hearing. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so I don't have any more questions right now then.
All right. Then I will continue with my staff report. So this is design review fiscal year 2022-0020. It is a formal design review hearing, so the committee can either approve as drafted, approve with conditions, deny or move the application to a later hearing date today. Based off of the staff's analysis, there are a few outstanding items that are probably worth the most discussion. The first being the pedestrian connections from those tenant entrances to the rest of the development and the public sidewalk on State Street. The second being the front facades and their interaction with the rest of the subdivisions. And Jeff, the applicant, did provide some clarity on that here today. It just was not submitted with the initial packet, so it wasn't reviewed. And then the third item, and arguably the most important, is the interaction of the industry flex use adjacent to the residentially zoned property. Knowing that the industry flex encompasses a multitude of uses, and it is defined as a multi-tenant structure for the uses of equipment, rental and sales, light industry, motorcycle sales, service, storage, rental, service provider, storage yard, vehicle services, and other permitted uses within the zoning district that which it is in. It does require a conditional use permit within the C2 zoning district. And approval of that conditional use permit will be required prior to the construction of the development. However, there is a section of code under 82C 24 that is specific to the use of an industry flex. And while it might be more appropriate for the Planning and Zoning Commission to determine whether or not this site is in, or this application is in compliance with this section of code, it still should be acknowledged by the committee. But there's a provision in there and it says that all mechanical equipment emissions, shipping, indoor delivery, or other outdoor activity areas shall be located a minimum of 500 feet from any abutting residential districts. The property to, I'll call it the south, so along the southern property boundary line of this entire development is zoned R2, which is a low density residential zoning district, making it so that the activities I just mentioned could not happen within 500 feet of that southern property boundary line, effectively not allowing for any of that to be done within the property itself. And then moving on into Discussion items for the committee. It's in relation to 8.4C, which is design provisions of non-residential structures. The updated schematics show additional glazing added to the northern facade of those two units most adjacent to State Street. However, those percentages were not included in the packet, so staff wasn't able to review them. It is a condition in the decision document to require code compliance, so at least 15%. Updated site plans need to be submitted showing those pedestrian connections from every primary entrance to the public sidewalk on West State Street. And additionally, the landscape plans were not submitted in this new packet, or rather, I'll say landscape plans were submitted for the pre-application, but they were not resubmitted as part of this formal application. So any of the landscaping information found in the staff report is based off of the pre-application landscape plans. So with that being said, the applicant does propose to rearrange some of the parking lot in the south, which includes removal of some of the existing parking lot trees, which would require an arborist report to make sure mitigation is had for those healthy tree calipers. And an arborist report was not submitted, but it is conditioned in the decision document to require that. The pre-application submittal for the landscape plans showed 17% of the site is dedicated to landscaping. We can assume that it's about the same since plans have not changed drastically, but staff still needs an official landscape plan submitted for review. That can be, or that is conditioned so that it is submitted prior to the issuance of a building permit. And then as this is a commercial use and the adjacent property is residential, there is a requirement for 10-foot perimeter landscaping. And based off of the discussions of at the pre-application meeting, staff has gone ahead and conditioned that evergreen plantings are placed along that southern property boundary line to help further screen the property. And with that, I stand for any questions.
The talk through signage for a second, as far as I guess what design control would be on each sign, because there's a lot of units and I can see that getting really busy with a bunch of different signs and sign types, etc. Would this trigger a master sign plan and some requirements under that?
Yeah, as proposed, I do not believe that it is code compliant. Of course, I didn't analyze it in the sense that those signs were actually where they were going to be installed. And I'm not as familiar with sign code off the top of my head, but it doesn't appear to be code compliant. If they were to want to have those signs as shown in the renderings, it would likely take a master sign plan and come back through the design review committee to gain approval of non-code compliant signs.
Yeah, and I understand that the architect's likely just putting a block in that says there's a sign here, and that's totally understandable. But I just wanted to know that that would be triggered at some point to
get
some consistency and sizing to that.
Yeah, and I thought it was preliminary in nature as well. But when it comes down to it, they would apply for a sign permit. If it's not code compliant with code, they would essentially get denied a permit and then apply for a master sign plan for DR.
Thank you. And then in general, a lot of what you spoke about as far as the conditional use permit for the specific uses or potential specific uses, that's not necessarily our purview. Is there anything specific you want us to look at regarding that would be under our purview?
No, I wanted it to bring it to the attention of the committee, knowing that this might be an issue coming up later when they actually apply for their conditional use permit. And
Which would come back through us.
Well, so the conditional use permit would not come back through the committee. It would go to planning and zoning and then up to city council potentially.
And then just to confirm, I did not see any letters from neighbors or any public comments. Did I miss some, or was there just not any?
I don't recall receiving any. The application has been noticed, so agencies, the 300-foot radius notice to neighbors has been released. But as this application fell under the older design review process, this application did not have to do a neighborhood meeting for a design review. They will be required to do it for a conditional use permit, though.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Nothing for me, thanks, Hannah.
Thank you. So I guess with that, I will open up the public testimony. Is there anyone in Zoom that wishes to provide public testimony? See nobody. Jeff, I will give it back to you for a rebuttal.
Yeah, thanks. I think just kind of go down your list, the new landscape plan, which I will send into you, does show kind of all the connections like we've talked about, which you were wondering, our glazing on the front facade. I'll officially send that into you. We will get an arborist out there to look at whatever trees we have, if we're disturbing those trees. I did talk to our landscape architect about the evergreens on the south, and they are in this new plan, so hopefully that'll help satisfy that as well. And then the master sign plan is no problem either. We can put one together. We'll have one of those put together for everybody when it's time. Other than that, like everybody said, those are just conceptual. Here we are, just kind of placing placeholders at that point. Other than that, we don't have any more comments.
Any questions for Jeff?
Nope.
All right. And then I guess I'll close the public hearing and open it back up to the committee members for any kind of discussion.
I think, I guess to start off, if it's allowed to have through the conditional use to have, I guess that's what we're looking at here, is whether the design from a design review standpoint works, if it's allowed to be there. And I keep coming back to just the relationship with all of these garage door access points and the parking and that's right in front of it. And it just, I guess my question that I asked Jeff in his presentation, it just that vehicular pedestrian relationship just seems a little problematic. But I think that's more of a, how is this going to function in an operational standpoint than necessarily, I mean, it's got a big sidewalk that connects all these access points, albeit kind of feels like a sidewalk and it kind of feels like a driveway. So I do think that if we don't have the current landscape plan showing all the connectivity from the out from State Street, just the connectivity in and around this, I think that that's already conditioned. So yeah, I mean, the roof line's broken up. I don't know, from a flex industrial space type building. I think it. I mean, it works from that aspect.
Yeah, I think any access, like overhead garage door bay access issues like the applicants kind of alluded to is, it's not going to be tow trucks coming and going out of these garage doors on a regular basis. It's going to be kind of like, in my mind, it's going to be loading and unloading once in a while. And, I can think of 100 uses for these bays with big garage doors that don't require the vehicular access to them on a regular basis, if at all. So I think that's it's kind of a programming thing that's on the owner and developer and end user rather than on design review. So I think it functions as it is. And this isn't it's not a street facing thing. We're not looking at it in the same, regards as we do a lot of projects. The small building, it's been called out on front near State Street, that has the front facade that we would look for on a street, and it's even set back from the street. So I think that meets all the criteria. This big building has the articulated roof lines, it has covered entries, it has some articulations with additional canopies. I think it meets all of the things we've been looking for in this type of building. I asked about the neighbors just to, hear their reactions, and that may be a future hearing with planning and zoning, that the neighbors get a postcard or they have the neighborhood meeting, and then there's some feedback back and forth there. But that may just be a use thing rather than a design thing. I think there's opportunity in the depth of these trusses to hide the mechanical units from certainly the side we've been looking at, but also then maybe a recess and then a parapet wall in the back to hide those units from the residential backyards as well. So I think this is working for me to support an approval as it's been conditioned by staff.
Well, then I'll make a motion for approval with the draft conditions for staff.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thanks, Jeff. Good luck.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, Hannah, before you guys get off, were we able to have that quick discussion about the take 5, or is it too late? I know I sprung it on you like Friday. So it's like, if it's okay if we can't.
Yeah, is the committee open to having a discussion about a previous application, the take 5?
Glenwood and
application off Glenwood and
Riverside.
State Street?
If
Is
you
it,
bring it up and remind us what it is.
yeah, is it something you got some I mean, you can show us what we're talking about, or?
Right, it's a simple landscape discussion. Let me bring up the street view for you. So it's just about, there's some trees. Let me get
Just
there. real
what
quick.
quick point of order, do we need to close the meeting or anything, or is this, are we set moving forward?
So I was gonna keep the public hearing open and just include this as a discussion
Okay.
item.
Perfect.
Right. And I appreciate you guys taking, like I said, I don't want to be here very long. I just want to show you. So what we've got here, we approved this take 5. It's been a while ago. Let me share my screen again. So this is actually at Glenwood, and I believe it's Riverside. It's across from D&B.
Oh, okay.
Right. Not necessarily State and Glenwood, but we approved it here. We got some extra glazing, that like that. We actually have our building permit. They've started foundations. They're going all out. The owner approached me and asked if I could talk to you guys about those trees right there. They do, I guess, block the view from the corner. Fairly tall. They do hide a natural gas. It's not like a small, I wouldn't call it distribution area, but some natural gas comes in there and then it gets pushed out to the shopping center. They want to know, before we do a formal submittal, could we do a formal submittal to you guys? If you would be opposed to us removing those trees, replacing them with something maybe not so bushy, and some different lower bushes to help still screen that gas meter, natural gas deal that's right there. So I guess that's our question. Are you guys opposed to taking out those trees, replacing them with something cylindrical type tree?
My initial thought is I don't like the idea of taking out mature landscaping.
Okay. Right, I
So-
understand.
And replacing it with non-mature, I mean, something that's small and very uneventful. So, yeah, I mean, that was indicated initially to remain per your plans, correct?
Right, so this is actually on I'm gonna call it on the association's property, right? It's on the business park's property. So it was never really part of our
Okay,
landscape plan. And it was never really brought up owner really didn't bring it up till I guess he really started standing out there more recently going, oh my gosh, this is from the corner. It's pretty tall.
so it's part of the common landscaping
Right.
around the whole concept, and
That's correct. And we talked to the association and said, hey, well, are you guys opposed to any of this, what I just described? And they said, no, they're okay with it. They said, but you got to get Garden City to approve it first, which we knew. But so before I did a formal submittal and went through the whole process just to have everybody say, oh no, we really like these trees. Let's just have a 5-minute discussion. And if it comes out that you guys like them, then that's what we get.
well, I guess from my standpoint, I think it's important to understand that, all that landscaping around the perimeter there was thought of and proposed as part of the totality of this large commercial development. And so to start, pulling pieces and parts of that away at different times as things happen on the interior of the development, I just don't think it's in line with the spirit of having that landscape put in there as part of the overall development and then modifying it for a piece of the development. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I don't know, do you have some thoughts, Derek?
My thoughts would be caliper replacement rather
Right.
than, shrubbery and caliper. I'm not a huge fan of conifers. I like deciduous trees that drop their leaves and then, the sun does its thing in the wintertime. So I'd be open to, inch per inch caliper replacements with significant, street trees, the appropriate size class street trees.
Yeah, I did talk to, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the caliper replacement. I did talk to Hannah and I talked about this on Thursday or Friday. Yes, we'd have to get that size. I'm not sure I can actually honestly fit, let's just call them 12-inch round trees. I have no idea, right? So we're talking 6 2-inch caliper trees, but it would be, we would replace trees in the common landscaping that need replaced or have died. And then if we can't fit them, we would pay into the tree fund, which is actually just got approved. I think we'd be one of the first to use it, the Garden City Tree Fund, which then could plant a tree where it's needed throughout the city. Because I don't think I can fit 6 or 12 new trees, particularly on this site, and still have everything survive. But something we can talk about. I mean, so what I'm hearing, I guess, is we've got Brett
Yeah.
who likes them, and we've got Derek who, I'm not a big fan of pines.
Derek who gives you an impossible solution to replace them.
I mean, do we have, and I'm not, I can't remember who the third member, there was a lady that was a landscape lady.
You're looking at the 2 members right now here.
Okay,
Jeff.
okay.
Tie-breaking
great,
Maureen
so,
is no longer with us.
I'm sorry, what?
Tiebreaker Maureen is no longer a tiebreaker.
Okay. I haven't seen her in a while, but yeah.
I guess I would have to see what your whole replacement scheme is. I quite honestly, I think it's nice to have the variety of deciduous and coniferous trees because the wintertime, it adds some color to the streetscape to have some of those evergreens present. So I think when you look at this again, like the totality of it is that perimeter landscape, offers something to a kind of a buffering element between these large commercial developments and the street frontage. So definitely whatever is done to mitigate removal of those needs to happen in that kind of perimeter space.
Right.
To add trees internally doesn't really do the same. So, and if there's not enough room, and because we're putting such small trees back, and now we get rid of these large mature trees, and we got 3 small 2-inch caliber trees there. It's a whole different. It's going to take a long time for this buffering element to get back to a state that it is now.
Yeah, and it's kind of just now where you'd call it a tree, not a sapling. That whole streetscape is just now beginning to provide some shade and buffer.
And I think these corner locations, especially like this, where you're entering into this residential development, and there's this something that's even more important about the corner landscaping and the attention to it. So I would have to, I guess, am I no way? I don't think that's what I'm saying, but it's the onus is really going to be on what gets presented to compensate for the removal.
Sure. Okay. And that gives at least me some discussion points with the owner, if is it worth going through to go
I mean, I think you got visual exposure from this view right here. to that piece of property where the development is. And on the other side of those trees, you got visual exposure coming the other direction. So is it really that necessary to remove those large mature trees to gain additional visual exposure?
Right. Right. No, I appreciate it. I mean, that's why we're, talking for 10 minutes.
All right.
Okay. I mean, I'm good with what we just talked about. I appreciate it, Brett and Derek.
You bet. You bet,
Yeah.
Jeff.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Does the committee wish to discuss anything else further? I don't have anything scheduled for discussion.
Nope.
I don't think so.
Thanks for running the meeting.
Were we talking about 8247 West State Street?
Yep, so we are going to close the public hearing
Oh,
and
got
then
it.
have a consultation afterwards, because it is a different process.
Got it. Thank you.
Right, thanks.
Sure.
Mhm.
Gary's like, why have I been here?
I know. All right, so I guess with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 5:21 p.m. And then give me a second while I stop the recordings.